Good morning. My name is Tim Franson, and welcome to the externally led, patient-focused drug development meeting on schizophrenia. I'm here with my co-host, Paulie Benjamin, and we're coming to you live from Washington, D.C.'s metropolitan area, not too far from where the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA's, headquarters are located. Paulie?
Thanks, Tim. Hi, I'm Paulie Benjamin. We're so pleased to be here today as the schizophrenia community comes together to share their experiences about living with the condition and their views on current and future treatments. This is an incredible opportunity for the FDA, therapy developers, stakeholders, doctors, to learn more about what's important for people living with schizophrenia and those who care for them.
To open today's meeting, it's my pleasure to introduce Mary Palafox, Chair of the Board of the Schizophrenia and Psychosis Action Alliance, who'll be providing some welcoming remarks. Mary, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our patient-focused drug development meeting, Reimagine Schizophrenia, Transforming How We Are Treated, Function, and Thrive. I am Mary Palafox, Chair of the Board for Schizophrenia and Psychosis Action Alliance, the organization hosting this meeting. We are so excited for this day to finally arrive. Many months of planning have gone into this meeting, and we are extremely grateful to have the opportunity to present this information. But first, we would like to thank the FDA for being here to listen to what our community has to say. We believe strongly in the need for more and better treatments for schizophrenia. We hope you will take what you hear today into account as you review prospective therapies for this condition. In particular, thank you to Dr. Fischer, who will be speaking in just a few minutes. We are also grateful for this opportunity to collaborate with our partners in planning this meeting, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Mental Health America, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and the National Council on Mental Wellbeing. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting this meeting and for your dedication in developing treatments for people living with this condition. Thank you to Dr. Keshavan, who will be giving a clinical overview of schizophrenia, and all the other healthcare providers across the country who are listening in today. Lastly, and most importantly, thank you to the people who are living with schizophrenia and to their loved ones, especially those who have the courage to share their stories on the panel and in the following discussions. You are the very reason we are here, why we advocate so hard to transform the treatment paradigm and improve how you are treated, function, and thrive. As a community, we have some exceedingly difficult and unique needs. We face a lot of barriers in getting the type of treatment that is necessary to stabilize the condition, halt the progression of the illness, prevent cognitive impairment and neurodegeneration. It can take years for people to find the right medication to alleviate their symptoms, often traveling a road fraught with uncertainty, discrimination, and unbearable pain. I personally know how it feels to not know if your loved one will even make it another day, to be dismissed for not being sick enough to receive emergency care, and inadvertently enter the criminal justice system. Schizophrenia and Psychosis Action Alliance is here today to promise you that we will continue to collaborate with all our partners to find solutions to all the challenges and barriers. We are committed to do this because those with schizophrenia deserve to be treated with the same rights, entitlements, and standards of care as any other neurological condition.
Thank you, Mary, very much. And now we'd like to introduce Dr. Bernard Fischer, the Deputy Director of the Division of Psychiatry at FDA. This is the part of the FDA that is responsible for reviewing potential new therapies for schizophrenia. Dr. Fischer will give an overview of patient-focused drug development and its role in developing new medicines for psychiatric disorders. Dr. Fischer, take it away.
Good morning. My name is Bernie Fischer, and I am Deputy Director for the Division of Psychiatry at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Before I came to the FDA, I worked in research at the University of Maryland in a clinic for people with schizophrenia. I provided clinical care, and I did medication research. I know firsthand how devastating schizophrenia can be. As many of you know, schizophrenia has a variety of symptoms. There are the symptoms of your mind playing tricks on you, symptoms like hearing voices, which are sometimes called positive symptoms. But schizophrenia can also make it more difficult to experience and express emotions, symptoms which are called negative symptoms. And schizophrenia can impair your cognition, that is, making thinking and problem solving more difficult. Currently available treatments for schizophrenia have some benefit for positive symptoms, but they don't address negative symptoms, and they don't address cognitive impairment. And the medications we have for positive symptoms don't work for everybody, and they can be difficult to take because of side effects. The FDA recognizes that there is much more progress that needs to be made and more work to be done to get better treatments for people with schizophrenia. Since coming to the FDA, I've been fortunate to participate in several patient listening activities. Meetings like this one today are extremely important to us. Learning what patients think helps the FDA and pharmaceutical companies develop better studies. It helps make sure that patients' voices are heard when we're figuring out whether a treatment works. It also makes sure that patient voices are heard when we're looking at how safe a treatment is. And it makes sure that patients' voices are heard when we're deciding whether the risk of a treatment is worth the benefit. All of us at FDA look forward to incorporating what we learned today into our thinking and understanding of how people with schizophrenia see risks and benefits of treatments. Thank you for your participation. We're grateful to each of you for being here and sharing your personal stories, experiences, and perspectives. It truly means a lot to us. Thank you. And Polly, Jim, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Fischer. It's important for all of us to understand the FDA's commitment to PFDD and how you use the information that will be shared in this meeting as you consider new products, and especially that importance of benefit and risk balance. I'm now pleased to introduce Dr. Matcheri Keshavan, professor at Harvard Medical School and a practicing psychiatrist who has years of experience treating people with schizophrenia. Dr. Keshavan will give an overview of the symptoms of schizophrenia and current treatment approaches. Dr. Keshavan, over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak about schizophrenia as part of this patient-focused drug development meeting. Here are my disclosures, my grants, as well as the sources where I am advisor to. I also edit the journal Schizophrenia Research. Today, I'm going to speak about what is the nature of schizophrenia, also about what might be the causes of this complex illness, as well as the brain mechanisms that underlie this illness, our current approach to treatment, and the unmet needs in treatment of schizophrenia, and some ideas for future steps. Schizophrenia is a common chronic brain disease that affects perception, thinking, affect or emotion, and behavior. The illness is about 0.5 to 1% of the general population, about between 2 to 3 million in the US. It's highly expensive to society as well as, of course, to the individual. The personal suffering cannot even be named in According to the recent analysis by the Schizophrenia and Psychosis Action Alliance, the direct and indirect costs of schizophrenia are over $280 billion in the US. Schizophrenia is one of the most highly disabling illnesses in all of medicine, as per World Health Organization estimates. Less than 20% of individuals with this illness have gainful paid employment. This illness reduces lifespan by 10 to 15 years because of medical comorbidity, suicide, and accidents. Schizophrenia typically begins in adolescence and often lasts lifelong. It's important to keep in mind that schizophrenia is a syndrome, not a disease, because we do not have a specific known cause for this illness. It's a collection of symptoms. The current diagnostic criteria for schizophrenia, according to the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the latest version is the DSM-5, involves characteristic symptoms lasting for at least a month, the presence of a social and occupational dysfunction, an illness that has lasted at least 6 months, and the symptoms are not attributable just to a mood disorder or to substance abuse or a general medical condition. Among the symptoms of this illness, there are some which refer to disorders of perception and thinking, which we collectively call positive symptoms, such as hallucinations, like hearing voices where no one is there, or delusions, which refer to beliefs that others do not share, as well as disorganized thinking, what we call loose associations, and disorganized behavior. By contrast to these positive symptoms, they also might have what we call negative symptoms, that is, the absence of certain mental functions that we all normally have, including our social interactions and motivation, ability to experience pleasure, and so forth. And these are together called negative symptoms that refer to amotivation, anhedonia, which is the lack of ability to experience pleasure, and asociality. Now, in terms of the brain mechanisms that underlie these symptoms, imaging studies have shown that schizophrenia is related to dysfunction in multiple circuitries in the brain. The positive symptoms, which are described as disorders of perception and thinking, are thought to be related to a particular network in the brain called the salience network, which is the brain network that is important for us to focus on what is important and suppress what is unimportant. And people with schizophrenia often have difficulties distinguishing between truly important signals and those that might be not so relevant, so that individuals with this illness often consider everything in their environment as being threatening or of special importance. They might also have dysfunction in a circuit called the default mode network. When this network is dysfunctional, the individuals might have their mind wandering, if you will, leading to thinking disturbance. The negative symptoms, which refer to failure of or a lack of motivation, might be related to a particular network in the brain called the reward system. The cognitive impairments, which refer to difficulties with attention and working memory and executive functions, may be related to what we call an executive network. So this is, in a nutshell, the underlying brain circuitry dysfunction in this illness. What might be causing these kind of circuitry dysfunctions? The current thinking is that there might be a problem in the way the synapses in the brain, the connectivities between neurons might be abnormal. And this may lead to a loss of brain tissue or decreased cortical thickness. Perhaps this synaptic deficit is related to an exaggerated pruning of synapses during adolescence. Normally, the brain undergoes a period of synaptic pruning to make it more efficient during adolescence. But if this becomes exaggerated due to genetic or environmental factors, that is what might cause this illness. Studies have shown that there is indeed a loss of dendrites or synaptic connections in the brains of people with schizophrenia, as you see in the bottom two neurons that you see in this picture, compared to the top two neurons. And this is the decreased synaptic density, but which might characterize this illness. What you see in the cartoon to the top right is the progressive reduction in cortical thickness, as you see in the regions that turn blue. This might be exaggerated in people with this illness. Now, what might happen in the individuals with this illness at a neurochemical level? What might underlie what we call the brain chemical imbalance? For a long time, it was thought that it had to do with increased dopamine, which still is the current thinking, that there might be an exaggerated activity of what we call mesolimbic dopaminergic system. These are the lower brain regions. The mesolimbic system refers to the tracts that go from the midbrain to the limbic system, and an exaggerated activity of this might cause psychosis. But in recent years, it has also become clear that another dopaminergic system called the mesocortical dopaminergic system might be under functioning, which might explain the negative and cognitive symptoms. Even more recently, it has been understood that another neurotransmitter system called glutamate might be abnormally overactive or inefficient. And this may be related to a dysfunction of yet another neurotransmitter system called GABA, which normally keeps the glutamatergic system under check. So this is in a nutshell, the neurochemical basis as we understand schizophrenia at this time. What causes these kind of circuitry dysfunction and the neurochemical dysfunction? Currently, the thinking is that schizophrenia is a heritable disorder, but then we do not know the precise genes that might cause this illness. There may be thousands of genes involved. Some genes have a large effect, and a large number of genes have a small effect. But a large portion of the causation of this illness may be related to unknown environmental factors. And currently, our thinking is that certain genes that involve glutamatergic function in the brain, those genes that are involved in brain development, as well as some genes that are involved in immune mechanisms, might be related to the causes of this illness. And the way we think about it, the causal mechanisms in this illness develop sequentially like a domino effect over the course of lifetime, beginning with the genetic risk. There are environmental factors such as childhood trauma, cannabis exposure during adolescence, obstetric complications, and so forth. So an interaction between the genetic and the environmental factors might lead to a cascade of sequential derailments in brain development, beginning with failure of neuron formation or neurogenesis, neural migration, formation of synapses, the brain formation, And then around adolescence, perhaps the processes of excessive synaptic pruning that I mentioned, and also a problem with cortical myelination and the ability to develop circuits that are optimally functioning. And then as the illness progresses, there might be other mechanisms that come into play, such as brain inflammation, oxidative support, oxidative stress, glial functioning, cerebral housekeeping, and myelin repair. So the causal mechanisms of this illness develop over the course of time with multiple hits to brain functioning, leading to the overall picture of what we call schizophrenia. The current understanding of the treatment of this illness is that all antipsychotics are about similarly effective against psychotic symptoms. Perhaps one medicine called clozapine may be more effective than other agents in otherwise treatment refractory patients. Second generation antipsychotics, also called atypical antipsychotics, have a lower risk of side effects such as Parkinsonian and tardive dyskinesia-like symptoms compared to first generation antipsychotics. Some second generation antipsychotics like clozapine and olanzapine have significant metabolic side effects, risk of diabetes, and weight gain. Psychosocial treatments, including cognitive behavior therapy, cognitive remediation, social skills training, family-based treatments, and supported employment, have significant therapeutic benefits. What are the gaps in our current armamentarium of treatment? We don't have enough effective drugs to treat cognitive impairments or negative symptoms, or the lack of awareness in this illness, also called anosognosia. About a third of patients with schizophrenia have treatment-resistant positive symptoms. All current treatments have side effects. Over 3/4 discontinue treatment within 2 years. We do not have actionable biomarkers to predict outcomes or to make a diagnosis. We do not have treatments that modify disease. We have treatments that improve symptoms, but not disease-modifying treatments. In summary, psychoses are synaptic disorders of complex developmental causation. Treatments at this time remain symptomatic, but not disease-modifying. All current medications work by reducing dopamine transmission, even though we know that multiple neurotransmitters may be involved. Early intervention and coordinated care are very important. Novel approaches to biomarker-guided treatments are critically important. And new therapeutic agents that target a number of neurotransmitter systems such as glutamate, GABA, cholinergic, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant treatments are critically needed. Thank you very much.